According to a study by the National Assessment of Education Progress, 65% of fourth grade students in the U.S. scored below proficient on reading tests. Now, the apologists for government education have blamed COVID and, ironically, the lockdowns that the teacher unions demanded. But is that really what's behind test scores that have dropped to nearly 2-decade lows? Now, joining me now to discuss this and more is Meg Kilgannon. She is a senior fellow for education studies here at the Family Research Council. Meg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's great to be here.
All right, so this 65% number for fourth grade students reading below grade level probably isn't shocking to many. The numbers are actually just almost as bad for eighth grade students as well. But do parents have a better understanding of this now that so many have witnessed their children's Zoom classes during the pandemic and actually what they're being taught?
Yes, that is absolutely the case. And we saw or heard an investigation of this earlier this year in a podcast series called Sold a Story. And in that series, the reporter investigated this issue and really exposed how we all knew all along about the science of reading and how it is that children learn to read, which is phonetically. And a fad became, entrenched in the educational community, and we started using an approach called whole language learning, which was essentially children looking at words in the whole and having context clues about what there might be there. And, for some children who are good learners, they can still learn to read this way. But for children who have challenges or children who just need extra help, most children need to understand phonics and how phonics work.
And this is not an insignificant issue, because when you look at proficiency in reading, by the end of the third grade, it's a critical marker in a child's educational development. In fact, by fourth grade, they've got to be able to read because it is critical to all the other elements of learning, all the other subjects. And if they're not there yet at fourth grade, it's a good indication they could become a dropout. So this is a critical juncture in education. So I would have thought that we would have figured this out by now, that phonics works and this whole language learning is not as effective. But could it be because the educational establishment has been distracted by other letters other than reading, other than the ABCs? Could it be the LGBTQ insane agenda?
Well, it certainly shows you that a phenomenon, a fad, a cultural obsession can become the focus of just about anything. And in this case, the phenomenon at the time regarding phonetics was, this idea that captured everybody's imagination. And now the thing that's capturing a lot of people's imaginations has more to do with sexuality and your perceived identity and your just identity generally. Those things are thought to be of supreme importance, and if those things aren't sorted out, children can't effectively learn. And that is the fad now that is impacting children's education.
So it's distracting them from the main focus of what education should be. I mean, if a child can learn to read at a young age, and as they progress, the world is open to them. But if they can't read, the world closes in on them and desperation sets in. I mean, this is major, and to miss these indicators that I'm sure didn't just pop up last year.
Right.
And I know they want to blame COVID, but this was a trend that we saw even before COVID.
Absolutely. And there are other factors and fads that come into play here, especially one-to-one devices. The issuance of computers to every student in school so that we can do even more work online, and the fact that there are no textbooks anymore, all of the textbooks are online, all of that plays into reading as
Right,
well.
right,
And
right.
so there are just so many things that over the years have contributed to this steady decline. It
Well,
is steady, and it is steadily increasingly
I mean,
bad.
I've seen it even. I'm this may not come to a shock to those who work close to me. I'm not the best speller in the world. I've always been challenged that way. But it gets worse when you're using a computer and you have this autocorrect that is always, prompting you to or changing it for you. I mean, that is a lot of this, artificial intelligence that's supposed to help us learn is actually dumbing down society.
Right. Well, and now college professors are wondering how they're going to be able to tell if their students have actually written their exam papers and their theses, or did they get chat GPT to do it.
Right.
So, this is going to, maybe we'll return to the blue book exam and the handwritten
Yeah.
exams to assure that it's your work. I think that would be a welcome
Well,
return,
I'm
frankly.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, Meg, but I think parents have to think long and hard about sticking their kids into these government-run schools that are more preoccupied with the LGBTQ agenda than they are the ABCs and the basics of learning. I think parents need to look at homeschooling, they need to look at private schooling and Christian schools, but this is a matter of success or failure if you can't read. Last word.
I absolutely agree. And I think as well, this is the byproduct of Christians leaving the public school space. We need to take our children out, but we need to place ourselves, maintain our position within that system. Because it's when there's an echo chamber with only one ideology or one worldview that's dominating the situation, that's when you see these problems happen. That's when these phenomena capture everybody's imagination and become the new silver bullet for solving whatever problem that we have to solve. And that just is that there's no substitute for hard work, for self-discipline, self-control, the role of parents in the family. Nothing is going to change those realities.
Well, thanks for finishing that thought for me, Meg, because you're absolutely right. Our children shouldn't be sacrificed to public education, but we need to be involved in their making a difference as teachers, Christians in the classroom, as well as on the local school board. Meg, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tony.